she called me while I was at a Chili's and was like, Alex, what are all of these romance novels with all these like naked men on the front? And I was like, oh, yeah, those are mine. Do you want to talk about this now on the phone while I'm at Chili's? And she was like, oh, I don't know. And I was like, well, I'm gay. So those are mine. We can talk about this when I get home, I guess.
That's how
And
you broke it to her? Like,
yeah, I told her over the phone while I was at a Chili's and she was at
it's
home.
like, stop annoying me. I'm gay. We'll talk about it
Literally,
at
I'm
home.
gay. I'm at
Yeah.
Chili's. I'm hungry. Let me go.
Oh man, it's been so weird moving to like the West Coast. In terms of
Wow.
like, it's not like a big city. It's just Sunnyvale is like a small. It's not small. I don't know. My comparison of big and small is weird because where I live, everywhere there are like a million people. So, um,
That's true.
but yeah, it's like, but I don't know. It's not walkable. I would say it's walkable. You can walk, but it's not
Hmm.
nice to walk, along the
I
highway
feel
or whatever.
if I had to guess what it's like, if it's anything like the Central Valley and or LA, it's probably just roads and strip malls.
It is just roads and strip malls. Yeah, yeah. I think
I
San
mean, that's
Francisco's a
America,
little.
baby.
Yeah, I know. I know. Like, I randomly wake up to earthquakes here. It's crazy.
Really? They're
Yeah.
happening that you can feel, that's insane. I just very recently I have been like obviously my whole life I'm like I want to move to Seattle, but everyone's like, but what about the big one or whatever? And while that is true, I am just so fascinated with it and earthquakes because I've never felt they're like the one of the only natural disasters that I've never experienced.
Oh, okay.
So for
Really?
me, I am like hyper fascinated and I'd love to know what they're like what they how they work, why they happen, what they feel like.
Mm-hmm. So like, I I I mean, I'm assuming that the West Coast is on like a very delicate tectonic plate situation. That's why it's like prone to
Hmm.
so many earthquakes. Like in the last, I don't know, when did I move here? September. So it's been like almost 6 months. So in like the last six
Hmm.
months, I've like experienced about five earthquakes, three small ones and two big ones. One big one, like it got me out of my bed
Wow.
and I stood up and I almost like, it makes you disoriented. So I'm like, ah, dude.
Uh-huh.
But I'm not too worried.
That's
I
really
don't
interesting.
know.
I mean,
Yeah.
you shouldn't be like the big one from all those random research that I'm doing with all of my free time. Apparently, I the big one is the San Difuco plate
Mhm.
in off the coast of Washington and Oregon. That is like, can you hear that?
No.
Good, good.
Is it noodle?
It's just my cat screaming. Yeah. Because I've been gone for 2 days, she gets
Oh,
a
okay.
little anxious. And so when I come home after being gone for a while, she just screams for 30 minutes and then quiets down.
Hey,
It's very,
it's her way of like showing love, you know.
yeah, she's showing
Yeah.
love. And
Yeah.
there are worse things she could do.
Yeah.
So
Where were you?
anyway, literally, she was like, where have you been? I have so much to say. I've learned so much. The birds, they fought.
Right, right,
Anyway,
right.
there's that crazy plate that's been building up like it's a small tectonic plate that's like dying basically. It's going under the like continental plate of the US and it's been jammed for a very long time, and it's been known to like basically go off every 500 to 1500 years, and like usually it's a magnitude 9.0 earthquake. It's a pretty big earthquake. It's it's an earthquake that would last 4 to 5 minutes, which is really long. And
Wild.
it's, yeah, and like that's the one that I think freaks me out the most. Seattle is pretty safe from it. Portland is pretty safe from it, but nonetheless, it's fascinating. I also watched the Mount St. Helens. You should watch the Mount St. Helens documentary on National Geographic. It's killer. The whole time I was like,
Dude.
because it blew off half of a mountain. The mountain was gone. It erupted sideways. It was like, the mountain, they got a little hole at the top. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to go out the side. Why? Who knows? Oh.
Dude, that's fucking crazy. So all of this is like not resting well with me because I'm thinking that this property is like kind of old. So it's from the 50s or something.
Mm-hmm.
So there are like signs all over the property warning us about asbestos and all that kind of shit, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, if it survived from the 50s, I guess I'm good. And that's how I'm rationalizing the whole earthquake situation. Like, hey, it's older than
You're
my
fine.
dad.
I mean,
I'm good.
There have been like 3 or 4 big earthquakes in San Francisco since the 50s. Like 7 6.0s. So if the building is still up, you're probably fine. And also all that asbestos, it can't even light on fire.
No, and I don't think it's inside my house. It's like around the property. And I'm not walking around every day sniffing for asbestos,
I feel like, are the signs like don't shake the walls?
No, it's like if there are moments of construction, be aware or like be safe.
Of the powder?
Yeah.
You want to be safe? Very vague. Very vague.
Very vague. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay. Is there a formula or an agenda, or are we just talking? Is my question.
We're just talking. I just want to know what you've been up to because I haven't seen you in like 6 months.
Yeah. Maybe even more. Like seen you in person, maybe a year.
That's
fucked is that?
Crazy. That's fucked up.
Yeah, it's fucked up. I haven't seen, the only person I've seen is Sarah, and that's because she still lives, and Sophie. I saw Sophie. No, I haven't even seen Sophie since I moved to Boston.
Not even like on video call. You might.
Oh yeah, video calls. Yeah. I video call. Well, no, Sophie and I, we don't video call. I don't know. We just text a lot. I haven't seen, my like social circle has really shrunk down to like Kevin and Kevin's roommate Mary, who is a trip. Love her. She's great. I'm ready to like re-expand out my social circle. Yeah. But it will be for a bit.
What have you been? I mean, okay, I get it. Like the whole, first of all, where we left off was, I don't think you were there for the last meal we had at the studio before the studio closed down because of COVID. Not. No. So I haven't seen you for that either. Yeah, you just kind of
I was
like
gone. I was in Michigan.
Went #hermit on the whole situation. Yeah.
I still am. I mean, part of that was so that I could see Kevin. He's really, he's been really on it, and I think strict with the quarantine in a good way, but it just meant that I couldn't see anyone.
Yeah.
Just to keep the pod small. But yeah, I mean, it sucked. It still sucks. So now I don't know. I'm still working from home. I'm a strategic designer for Philips Healthcare.
Right. Yeah.
I literally do whatever they tell me to do. I have no.
That's the strategy.
Yeah, literally. It's like wherever they need me to like help, I get sent to, which is great. I have like my fingers in a ton of different and weird projects that I would literally never have thought I was doing. like there's one, I guess I can't, there's a couple that are like super secret that I can't talk about, which is
Okay.
also
We're,
weird.
we're definitely talking about that. I'm kidding. But before we get into that, we should tell me what's healthcare design? That's an interesting topic, I think.
Yeah. What's healthcare? Well, I
Like
mean,
I get there are
personally,
like for an industrial designer, there are different
mhm,
ways you could either design hardware or
mhm,
machinery that are in the
mhm.
healthcare space, but I don't think that's what you're doing. What you're doing is kind of different. So what is that?
Yeah, I think as much as, okay, so, I started out in architecture and then I moved into industrial design to like approach a different scale of design because it was
Yeah.
more interesting to me and I think more accessible in a lot of ways. And as much as I've tried to really push away from the architectural side of things, I think a large part of my job is like physical experience design within healthcare spaces, like ranging from exterior architectural work to interiors work. And I think healthcare, at least the way I approach healthcare design in my day-to-day life, is like, how do I make the patient and clinician experience the best that it can be and the most efficient without raising costs? Like
Hmm.
that's basically the healthcare design that I do. Now, my team is a huge range, right? Like you were saying, some people on it, who do healthcare design in my field, in my like on the consulting side of things. So what that means is that I go to places like they hire us to go in and then figure out how to make their hospitals, you know, anything from like prettier to like better functioning,
Right.
like anything along that scale. But other people on my team, they consult in on larger services. So they go and they look at an entire umbrella of a process, and they go in and try to make that process more efficient or
Mm.
like better designed, clearer, cheaper, whatever they're asked to do, which is really
That's like
interesting. And then we have people who like
that's like
consult.
music to my ears, man. I love all of that. Fine tuning.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Uh
really. I mean, that's the strategy of the title, right?
yeah.
But then we have other people who consult in on like MRIs. Like I was
Okay.
pulled in on a project to consult on the physical design of an MRI machine, of a Philips MRI.
Hmm.
Well, actually, it was an IGT. It was image guided therapy. There are also just like there's so much there that like I think healthcare design tends to be a pretty big umbrella.
Yeah.
So.
And yours is an interesting one because it like kind of um dissolves into like it starts as experience kind of dissolves into strategy and then kind of
Mhm.
comes back out as experience kind of you're like continuously like a pendulum in and out of like experience and strategy and that's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. They always talked about, okay, in school,
Yeah.
they always talked about that like expansion and contraction cycle,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and like that is so deeply ingrained. Like what you were just describing is like the strategy is the larger scale, right? Like it's the expansion. It's like what is the system as a whole? Like
Yeah.
what can be helped there? What can we add
Mm-hmm.
in? What can we ideate and build upon? And then you hone in on the little pieces that need the most care and like redesign or you know function changes, so many
Yeah.
things, and then you expand again and
Yeah,
you're
absolutely.
like, well, how do I, what are those pieces in there?
Yeah,
It's
and
cool, it's
that's
cool.
kind of like that's not really understood when people like first learn about strategy. Um,
Mhm,
for example, like when I used to be a management consultant, it's like a lifetime ago, right?
mhm,
We would do a lot of strategy as well because that's the job, right? But we never worked on strategy. We worked
mm,
on like little things around it and that kind of built the strategy. So you're never like touching the strategy,
mm.
you're always working around it, and that's what builds the strategy. So here you're always like working around the experience, and that builds the strategy, or that kind of like influences it or like fixes it and kind of streamlines it in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think a lot of times
yeah.
flipped. A lot of times it's like we've built the strategy and now we want to apply it.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, not my job. I am not at a high enough level, I think, to be thinking there. What I end up doing is applying the little pieces like in person. Like in the next couple of weeks, I think I'm flying out to Oklahoma to help with an enhanced IGT project where I'm going to go out and like work with the people on site to figure out what they need in their IGT space to make it the best that it could be, the most efficient, the
What's
prettiest, the most
IGT?
comfortable. Yeah, image guided therapy. Sorry.
Right. Okay.
Image guided therapy is basically any procedure that uses radiology or radiology equipment to do the procedure. So like catheters, heart catheters, anything vascular really, sometimes head stuff. Yeah, it's those machines are wild looking. They look like little claws.
Too. Okay. Yeah.
Well, yeah, MRIs.
Like, have you been traveling throughout the pandemic though for work or no?
Yeah. So I've had to travel 3 times now.
And hospitals too.
2 of them. What?
And hospitals too, right?
Yeah. 2 hospitals and 1. I guess 4 times. 2 hospitals, and then for another project was like at VFWs and stuff. I mean, obviously following all the protocols for Philips, which are really strict because they're based on the Dutch protocol.
Yeah.
So, tested before I get out there, test when I come back, quarantine as needed. I mean, with Kevin, being Kevin and Kevin's pod being so aware, it's been like 2 or 3 tests when I get back, like 1 2 days out, 1 4 days out, sometimes 1 6 days out, just to make sure that we're catching all of our, casting a wide net.
Yeah. Because the tests aren't really like, they test negative even like 5 days into COVID.
Yeah.
It's happening.
I mean, they're it's a moment in time. It's like a slice of the moment that Q-tip touches your nose. That's it. That's all it's measuring.
Such a strange disease. It's a strange disease. And now they found like this new strain somewhere. I forget, but they're saying that I think South Africa, which is like worrying. It's a worrying strain. Like
there's the one from South Africa.
That the thing won't work. The vaccine.
Yeah. Well, I will say it's not that it won't work. It's that the efficacy is much lower compared to, what's wild to me is that the vaccines are at such a high efficacy, like 95% for a vaccine is insane. The yearly flu vaccine is 40% effective. Like the MMR vaccine is really effective, but even it, I think, is like in the 70s, maybe the 80s. Like measles, measles, rubella, mumps.
There you go.
So 95% is insane. And so when they say, I guess I get less worried when I read into what they actually are saying is that like the vaccines are less effective, but they're still like 45%, 50% effective on those strains.
They are. And also like considering the turnaround time for this vaccine, it's fucking crazy. Like the level of technology and money that has gone in to make that possible. It's kind of commendable though. And not just one company, like so many companies too. Pfizer, Johnson Johnson, Covaxin from India or whatever. Like it's crazy. Very good.
The Chinese vaccines, the Russian vaccine. I mean, even like the Russian vaccine obviously is a little shaky because no one knows the data, but even then, like it's like the speed has been remarkable.
Yeah.
And so there'll probably be boosters coming out for those next ones anyways. I'm not super worried about it.
I can't wait to travel. I guess when I do travel, I'll be traveling to like LA or India. They'll send me to India too.
Okay, those are two very different
Yeah, dude,
places.
our company
You're
is
like, I'm either gonna go to
crazy,
LA or I'm
crazy
gonna
spread out.
go across the world.
Yeah, so our headquarters here,
Hmm.
okay, and then we have offices in Singapore,
Hmm.
India. That's
Hmm.
the tech place, Hyderabad,
Right.
and even in the even in the US, we're here in the Bay Area and in LA. Yeah, the work's kind of it's fun, super fun. I never knew that
Yeah. What it?
UX design was like. Yeah, so I work for this company called Evergent Technology.
Oh my
Um,
God.
we are like behind the scenes of everything you watch online, kind of. So whenever you're like, this is just an example. Let me give you an example though. This is
Hmm.
just an example. I'm not saying Netflix is our client, but for example, when you go on to Netflix and you sign up and you watch something, we are making that happen. So our company does the customer billing, the customer management, the content
Hmm.
management, and all of those things. So Netflix or whatever, say FIFA wants to distribute a game on their
Hmm.
website. So we help customers get the game. So we're like a streaming partner, right? So we're like behind the scenes of all the OTT platforms.
Like a liaison? Are you like the connector piece?
Like we're the machine that makes it happen. So
Okay. Okay. Okay.
if you
You're like
buy
the
an
processor.
yeah, so if you buy like a FIFA game and you want to watch it,
Hmm.
so our system allows you to like buy it and then stream it.
That's interesting. So, what is the design aspect of that? What are they? What are you doing?
So there's the product
Hmm.
that the companies go on to look at
Hmm.
their data for the customers, how many streams, what are the revenue, and all of those things. So that product is like a huge product, right? And
Yeah.
then so there's an experience to it.
Right.
So now that the product's ready, there's no like making a new product in a way, but there's
Hmm.
always like making that experience better. So there are a few
Yeah.
things that I'm
Maintaining.
trying to do, which I can't really talk about. But
Hmm.
it's gonna be like super cool. Plus, also it's working with these partners to make their experience better.
I
Working
mean,
with
that's.
yeah, like customer care agents, learning what their life is like.
Hmm.
The only time I've spoken to a customer care agent is when like I don't know, Uber Eats fucked up my order or something. But like the
Yeah.
process of how they put in those complaints and how
Hmm.
they like copy paste responses and what they do, the experience is like so interesting. So
Hmm.
yeah, just trying to like fine tune that and make that better. Yeah.
That's interesting. So, would you say that you're working more intern? Are you working like? So it sounds like you're working with external partner, like the people who are doing the streaming, not necessarily the general public, which is very interesting.
Yeah, it's B2B. Yeah, definitely.
Right. And then
Yeah.
are you, as a designer, a function of the company to benefit, like what you described with the customer agents? Are you working mostly with like internal company stakeholders, or are you working with the external businesses, the external business clients, partners,
Right.
whatever?
So most of the projects like internal,
Hmm.
but some of the projects are external. So for example, even if we're like trying to pitch to somebody and we need to fine tune the application to meet their needs of the RFP,
Hmm.
it's my job to design those fine tunings into the product.
Mm.
And then those get implemented and developed for the RFP and for the pitch.
Interesting. We work a similar way. Well, kind of. My team doesn't work like the rest of the design team at Philips does, but most of Philips design is a function is considered a function that is internal. It's like the research slash the other businesses that have been like bought or included into Philips reach out to designers or are paired with design teams to do projects that are like solely internal, and then those products will be put out. But our team is a little different because we're the consulting team, so we do part of that. We consult for our internal businesses, but we also consult for external clients. So I guess it's interesting that the projects you're working on ultimately benefit people within the company that are, it's like internal. It's like, how do you, or, you know, the first situation we described with the customer services people, like that's really interesting to me to like, because like, honestly, customer service representatives are probably the most bullied people in a company,
to like
just
no
by
fault
external
of their
people.
Own.
Yeah. I mean,
They didn't
and
do
like
anything.
literally they're the messenger.
Yeah.
Like to receive complaints. And like, I love the idea. I mean, I think it's really interesting that the company is focusing on making in some ways, I'm sure not always, right? Like ultimately it's for a better experience with the customer, but like that also that representative has an easier and smoother way to get that information is really cool. I mean, it's really interesting.
I think that's one of the dumbest things to do is to like take your problem out on the customer care agent.
Yeah, what are they can't do anything. I mean,
like I get you're angry, like your food didn't come on time, like, but why are you screaming at like the person's trying to help you?
What are they gonna do? They're not gonna go to the restaurant and bring it to you themselves.
Yeah. Like, what the fuck? I mean, it's so weird. It's so strange that in their head, that guy represents the company and the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I'm gonna take it out on that person who's probably trying to help me.
Yeah, they are. And they'll probably, I mean, they always say you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. And if you're going to be mean, you're not going to get anything out of it. It's just like a therapy session at that point.
So my best friend had his ex. Nobody liked her. She was like a customer care agent for American Express. And she was like a character. Okay. And the weirdest part was she would like say something went wrong with an order. She would call up those customer care agents and bully them and be like, you can't hang up on me till I tell you to, because that's the policy. I know the policy. I'm like, bitch. Like,
this is insane. That's insane.
Like, why are you doing that? Yeah.
You're not helping anyone.
Crazy, right? No.
And you're just hurting yourself. I mean,
it's like they're probably like your peer in another company, and you're doing the exact same thing that's like so taboo in your kind of like
that they hate, that you hate.
Yeah.
That's nuts. That's literally nuts. I mean, talk about anger management issues.
I was like, maybe you should like look into this relationship, you know.
Maybe you need to just like take a second look. Maybe get a customer service representative on it.
Yeah.
Maybe they can help.
I know.
Clear she's not good.
Dude. All right. I wanted to get a little bit into your life though, because this is the first episode. You'll be back for many more, hopefully. Good. Since this is the first one, you know, want to get it on like record. So you grew up like in Florida.
Oh yeah, I grew up in Florida.
Take us back to 1994, 1995.
Wow, yeah, 1994.
Spot on.
I was born on a blustery day in South Florida, Central South Florida, December 28th, 1994. I am the youngest of six technically. 6 plus 1, I'll say.
6 plus
and 1. Yeah. My parents are very old. Sorry if they ever hear this, but they are. My dad is 73 and my mom is 67.
It's a fact. Like, it's a fact.
It's true. They're older. They're seniors. So when
statistically, they're like in front of the line to get the vaccine. So, I mean.
Yes. My dad has already gotten the vaccine.
There you go.
Especially in Florida. I guess my mom must be 64 because she can't get the vaccine yet. Okay. And it's 65 and older. Regardless. So I was the youngest my oldest siblings are, I don't know, 44 34 and 40. My middle siblings are in their 30s. There's Dana and I. Dana's my closest sibling. She's the one I really grew up with. But for that reason, I was very independent. My parents weren't around much. They worked a lot, especially when we were younger. We were kind of a bit of a boom and bust family. We had a lot of money sometimes, and then sometimes we didn't have any money. My dad worked in construction, so it was all dependent on the real estate market. So when 2008 happened, he lost one of his jobs. And his other jobs moved him over to a new company. At that point, my mom was owning and operating a salon, which was amazing. So like for 7 years, my mom owned the salon before 2008. And at that point, I think a lot of the flamboyant characteristics of me came out. I dyed my hair a ton. My nails were done all the time. I mean, it was just like, it was a free for all, especially for a kid who was like.
Did you hang out at the salon a lot with your mom?
Yeah. I mean, because the salon was open from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. So my dad worked 9 to 6, 10 to 6, and so school got out at 1:30, which is wild. School started in Florida at 6:56 a.m. and got done at 1:30 p.m. It's insane. I never understood that system.
Right.
After school, I would go to the salon because there would be no one home. And when I was in elementary school anyways, I was too young. As I got older, I just spent a lot more time alone. But like I said, for all those reasons, I grew up fairly independent. When I was really young, my siblings raised me. So I think I've always just been very industrious. Is the word that, I had to be clever to keep, when your siblings are all there, you have to be clever to keep food in your mouth. You have to be fast. You have to know how to make your own food. You have to you have to be able to take care of yourself a little bit because it's a little bit of a competition every time you're in the kitchen. So for that reason, I've cooked my whole life.
Like a nice prison.
A little bit. I mean, the other thing is that my middle brother, growing up, he had a lot of problems with opioids, and that also took up a lot of my family's attention. So I think now I'm really grateful for it, but at the time there was no real parental support. Though I will say my parents are great. They're great parents. I have no complaints. It's just for that reason, I think I learned to rely a lot on myself to make sure that I was getting everything I needed. Whatever that meant academically, socially, physically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think eventually that led to me pursuing design because I really liked figuring out things. I liked breaking things apart. I liked figuring out how I can make them work better without necessarily the help of other people. I like the challenge of making things better, and I like beautiful things.
So what made you pick,
I liked a lot of the pretty things that I couldn't have,
Right. So what made you pick like architecture over ID in the beginning?
Well, I mean, quite honestly, when I was going on my way to undergrad, I flipped a coin whether or not I was going to go into architecture or do pre-vet and become a veterinarian because I also really love animals.
Right. Yeah.
My mom, this is a wild thing. Over the summers when I was a kid, my mom would send me to what she called cowboy camp. And I think what I called the parents want to be alone for a summer. And so I would go and basically you sleep in tents for a few weeks and you take care of barn animals. Yeah, I learned how to take care of horses. I learned how to take care of goats, pigs, pretty much any farm stock, any, food farm stock. And so from that point, after that, I really wanted to go into large animal veterinary sciences, like, take care of cows and horses. But I also really love design. I mean, for all the reasons I said before, architecture was I think the reason why I went with architecture was one, it was the only thing that was available to me at the college I went to undergrad, which was the University of Florida. And two, I didn't really know there was any other kind of design, you know? And I think at the beginning, it was a little bit of arrogance. I find in the field of architecture that like they consider themselves to be the highest art, the highest design field.
Mhm.
And personally, I disagree, but I think a little bit of me was like, I want to put things on this planet that will last forever. And now I look back on that and I'm like, that's a little insane. That's very, I mean, like, there were so many architects who went out and designed things and put things on the planet that will be here forever, and everyone hates them. So
Yeah.
looking back, I'm like, I think that's what made me, change and shift my perspective on design was that like, I love architecture and I always will love architecture and I will always draw architecture, but like, I can't necessarily commit to that, nor do I want to. And I think that there's a lot more ways to benefit people outside of, buildings.
And yeah, I wanted to like, I felt that too going to university. That was my first like design school experience, getting a master's very late in my life. And I did this whole history of Bauhaus and the way they started Bauhaus and the way they talk about it, the Bauhaus people. It's like architecture was like the goal and everything was like assisting it. Like the products are nothing but embellishments to a building.
Within the architecture,
Yeah. Which was like off-putting, especially like also the architecture undergrads would walk around like, like
in the world
with a giant pole up their butt, like, I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird field.
Thinking that, I mean, in some ways that makes sense, but I also think it's wrong. Like,
no,
especially
I get that it's important, but also like considering the fact that I totally lost my train of thought.
Well, I mean, I think like there were two ways that architects could have come at this problem, which is they could be like, we are everything and you should be serving the architecture, or it could be the architecture is serving everyone else. Like modernists, as much as I love modern architecture, like they weren't necessarily building to serve people. They were like, we're building this and people are going to be in it, but it wasn't necessarily about the people. And I think that can be a really dangerous way to design. I also think it can be like bad. It can end up really bad.
Yeah. There are architects like who design maybe projects for the homeless or the downtrodden, and there are architects who design shiny buildings in Dubai. But the thing is like also this is what I was going to talk about. Like also within the architecture field, the work is so grueling. And I hear a lot of the times, like if you're working for Zaha Hadid or whatever, if you're a junior architect or like an intern, you're paid in peanuts and you're working like around the clock.
You're a cat monkey. I mean, you're there to you're there to do the bits and pieces that no one else wants to do, which is, I mean, honestly, how a lot of fields work. I'm very grateful for where I work now because that's not really the case, but it also still is. Like, because I'm the newest person on the team, I'm often picking up on things that other people don't want to do, which for me ends up being good experience. But like, if that was all I was doing, oh God.
Yeah.
And like, architecture school is insane. Like, RISD was intense. RISD, the industrial design program was intense, but it was nothing compared to the hell that was architecture school, architecture undergrad. It was like, especially because at University of Florida, where I went to undergrad, I don't know, did I already say that? You were like me going through the whole podcast. I went to the University of
Florida. It's like UF. Did I say that?
Not super impressive. It's just, I keep saying it.
What's your mascot?
The Gators. Go Gators.
Oh, go Gators.
Yeah. it's a good school, a great school now. I think they've for whatever reason, UF is really it's now a top 10 public school in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
which is wild to me because at the time when I got in, I didn't want to stay in Florida. I was like, gotta
Right.
get out. But they turned out to have an amazing architecture program that was studio based, and it was 8 semesters of studio. So you start your first studio right when you're there, and they taught the Bauhaus style. So they were like, it was very conceptual for the first 2 years, and then it grew to be more and more literal as you went into your last year. And then your last semester was sort of like a little more exploratory, but like just to give you more freedom to kind of do a thesis thing, but there was no thesis.
Oh, okay. So you were graded on whatever projects you did throughout your
That
span there.
semester.
Oh, that's yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so it was just semester by semester. It was a 4-year bachelor's of design in architecture, which is just a pre-professional program. So like a program like that is meant to really prepare you for a shorter graduate degree. So a lot of people who do pre-professional programs like that, who go to like get their master's degree, they might only have to do a year or a year and a half versus a 2 or 2.5 year program.
Mm.
So that's the benefit. But the other benefit for me was that I could graduate and do whatever I wanted.
Right.
You weren't necessarily tied to getting your licensure and like trying to be an architect.
Yeah.
Like the 5-year Bachelor of Architecture program is kind of like that. You get your Bachelor's of Architecture, which is an accredited degree, and you can apply for licensure and you can become an architect. But what ends up happening is that a lot of people go into the architecture field and they're kind of stuck. There's not much you can do else with that degree. I mean, you can do a bunch of other design stuff, people do, but it's harder, I think.
I see. But then you graduated and you like worked at a firm, right? For a few.
Yeah. So I interned at a firm that I then worked at after I graduated. But both of them are temporary because when I had applied to go to RISD for industrial design right after undergrad. So it was like I had 9 months. We were done in May. RISD started in January.
Mm-hmm.
And so I worked at the firm for actually right after that is when I moved to Colorado to drive a bus. Right. And I lived in Breckenridge, Colorado, driving the ski bus in the summer, which was amazing. Another great experience that I think I will never like.
What made you take that decision? Like, what made you want to do that?
Well, I had 9 months. I was like, this is basically like my scheduled gap year.
Yeah. But I know like a lot of people would be like, oh, I have 9 months. I got into college. I have 9 months. I'm just going to like chill out. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and like, I also respect that because maybe that's what I should have done. But no, I was like, I don't want to be in Gainesville anymore. I don't want to be in Florida. I had spent my last summer in Denver and I was like, well, why don't I just go back out there? So I looked for minimum wage jobs, coffee shop jobs, stuff like that. And eventually I was like, well, why don't I work at one of the ski resorts? Because then I can get free access to the mountain. I get a lot of perks. And over the winter I can ski for free, which would be great. And this bus driver job came up and I was like, and it paid pretty well. I mean, it was like maybe $25, $26 an hour. And it was four days a week, 10-hour shifts, which is a lot, but it meant that I had 3 days off. So it was like, this is perfect. I can work for 4 days. And then the 3 days in the summer, I can get all my hikes in. And so I moved out there and joined the team. It was interesting. I mean, I don't think I've said this yet, but I'm gay. So everyone else there. Yeah. That's like a pretty key piece of my identity. And it was the first time I had really worked in I hesitate to call it a blue collar situation. But it like, you know, bus driving isn't exactly a glamorous job, and in Breckenridge it definitely wasn't. We drove
Right.
renovated Bluebird school buses, and we just like, and really the main job for us over the summer was like if it started to rain or it was too windy or there was lightning, they couldn't run the lift, the gondola that goes from the town to um, the base of the mountain in Breckenridge. They can't run it, so our job was to evacuate everyone off the mountain. So like during bad weather days, our like it'd basically just be us running loops for hours, getting everyone off the mountain.
That could get
And
scary driving in
yeah,
that
it's
like
I mean
under
like
that condition. Yeah.
it, and I mean I will say I really liked it. I liked the wildness of the weather out there. We've talked about this. I mean, that's my other fascination. I mean, like I'm basically a novice meteorologist at this point, and I think later on in life I'm gonna get a degree in meteorology and
You
just like
should. Yeah. Totally.
and do that because I like it's a real passion. Weather is a real passion of mine.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and there's just like nothing like it. There's nothing like it out there. There, you can have like ice storms in the morning.
You're like the only
Like
person if somebody comes up and tries to make small talk, like, "Hey, the weather
the
outside, huh?"
weather,
You would be like really into
absolutely.
it, like absolutely.
I mean, that's it. Actually gets me into trouble sometimes. It's like when they say the weather, and I get so passionate about it, and
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh no, no, oh no, no, no! I
No,
didn't,
no, no.
I didn't want this. I didn't ask for this."
Wrong. No, wrong person. Yeah.
So I have to
Um,
usually tone it in. Yeah.
but
So
no, but
bus.
your kind of like childhood is so unique in that way. Um,
Hmm.
I've known you for like about more than 3 years now, but we've never really gone so deep into each other's like lives, really. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's definitely a unique situation for our generation to like be the youngest of 7 siblings, 6 plus 1,
Mm-hmm.
and have parents who are like about 10 years older than the average or so. And your like oldest sibling is almost as old as like 10 years younger than my dad. So it's almost like having a sibling
Oh
is
yeah, he
as
could have
old
been
as
my dad.
somebody's father. Yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah, and somewhere I feel like that was it like difficult to kind of connect with your family in some way?
Uh, maybe. I've never really thought about it as like a difficulty to. I mean, I'm also the only LGBTQ plus person in my family, as far as I know,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
my nuclear family. So I've always associated a lack of connection to that, and less to like the age difference. But I mean, I think what ended up happening with the age difference was just like really they they cared and they loved me, but they didn't really care. They're like, oh, he'll be fine. Like kids are bouncy.
Yeah.
They, they just let me figure it out on my own. They really embraced the independence, probably because they were tired. They were like, raising me in your 40s and
Mm-hmm.
50s and arguably 60s. Like I'm only 26, so when I
Yeah.
graduated undergrad, my mom was in her 60s. It's like
And they
I
totally
get it.
have raising a child down at that point. Like they know exactly the things that you could do, you know? But
Yeah, and
yeah.
I have to say, I was a good kid. Like my sister and I, as far as my family goes, like we're definitely the chillest kids.
Okay.
Like Dana was so afraid of getting in trouble, so she never stepped out of line. She got amazing grades, and like once she left for college, she was like, "Well, I guess I'm just gonna live my life now," and she never changed, and that's great.
That's
She's the
amazing.
most
Yeah.
consistent person I've ever met.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was me, and I had a lot of problems, but like I think the weirdest thing about my problems in my family was that they never found out. They never knew. They never really knew what I was doing.
Right.
Like and I made sure of that.
Yeah.
I was definitely like in high school. I partied a lot, but I never let my grades slip. And, you know, I was involved in a lot of stuff. At that point in my life, I was really deep into music. And, you know, I played all those wind instruments, the bassoon originally,
Yeah.
because
Badass.
I'm forever and always a nerd. It's, but yeah, I mean, and that, I don't ever think there was there was never a disconnect, I think, from them alone. I think it was always sort of like, yeah, I'm just sort of raising myself with their
Yeah.
help. They were there to help and they were there to
Totally.
support, but very independent. They were like, you know, we'll help when you ask. We'll be there when you ask. So I always appreciated that. And
So
my
like,
parents are very non-emotional people.
right. Okay. So when did you figure out that, you were gay? Was that very early on or?
Oh yeah, I mean like whenever I get asked this question, I'm like, I don't think there was ever another option. I think I was like, I've never felt attraction to women. Sorry, women, you're better than men, but I've just never felt attracted to any
Right.
woman. It's,
Yeah.
uh,
So you've never
I,
dated a girl before?
well, I did in middle school. It was for a weekend. It was a little wild. She called me the day after we had like started going out and said that she loved me. And I was like, this is too much, too soon. I don't even know what that means. And so on that Monday, I had my friend break up with her for me. It was real dark.
Oh no.
Not my best
Right.
moment, but definitely
Right.
like
No.
prime content for a TV show.
Absolutely. Prime content for this show.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like honestly, it's funny. It's funny. It's like um, I it's God. I feel bad. Obviously, like I hurt her, right? But like
Yeah.
there was so many other things going on, and it's like a 2-day relationship where I immediately panicked. It's very you watch that show Pen 15?
Dude, I finished that show last week and it's like risen to my top 5 shows all time. So good.
Very good. It's very good. And that was my middle school life.
Right. I was just gonna bring up
Just
Pen 15. It's
awkward.
like it sounds like Pen 15. Yeah, awkward. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um.
I mean, that's right. And like, I guess yeah. So, moral of the story is that I've never. It's never been a question for me. It's always been like a question of like when and how do I say it,
Yeah.
and like figuring that out. I mean, like I think for my family too. I was a really flamboyant child. I was like, I mean, I think unfortunately growing up in a small town in Florida, a lot of that was bullied out of me, but I never dated any girls, really never dated any girls. Um, I mean, my poor mother. I mean, back in the day before we had constant access to technology, I used to look at porn on our family computer. And when, and that meant that I could only do it, you know, whenever no one was home. And
Yeah.
like, so that really limited my options. So what I did instead was I often printed out my porn, which is an insane thing to do. But I was young and dumb, and
Yeah.
I
Like just
one time I
snapshots.
hid it underneath the back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like just like pictures of the scenes of
Yeah.
gay porn, and not like cute soft core gay porn. Like I mean, hardcore
Yeah.
Falcon Studios. If anyone's listening, if you know what that is, printed it out, and I would hide it underneath my bathroom sink. And one time, my mom found it, and she showed it to me, and she was like, "Alex, what is this? Why is this here?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know what that is. I have no idea. What is that? Wow, gay porn in this household,
Right.
in our sanctum?
Yeah. Like
No, that
printed
must be
and
Matt."
and bound as a flip book.
Yeah, literally printed
Wow.
and bound. Who would do that? It's insane.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's Matt's porn. And I blamed it on my
Oh
middle
no.
brother.
Okay.
And I mean, I don't know if that was the end of it for me. She was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll ask him. And then I never heard about it again.
Mm. I don't
Until
think your mom
obviously I can't.
did you. I don't think your mom asked Matt either, did she?
I highly doubt it. If
Yeah.
she did, that would have been a wild conversation. I mean, Matt was having sex with women in the house like every day. It was
Right.
insane. That's a whole other thing, but like there was no question about Matt's sexuality.
Yeah.
So the fact that my immediate thought as the 13-year-old me was like, that's Matt's porn. Same thing to say.
Yeah. But in your head, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. A lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, this is it. It's ride or die now. I like, anyway, what did end up happening with my mom though was that she found that I must have been like a very horny child because I was buying all of these like gay romance novels on our Kindle.
Okay.
And one day she called me while I was at a Chili's with my theater friend because I was also in drama because of who I am as a person. And she
Drama
called me
is
while we were
life.
out.
Life is
Right.
drama.
Drama
Yeah.
is life. I'm drama. My family
Drama
is
me,
drama.
yeah.
Life is just drama.
Yeah. I'm just me on
Anyway.
stage, y'all. Yeah.
This is my stage. The world is my stage.
The world is. Yeah.
Anywho, she called me while I was at a Chili's and was like, Alex, what are all of these romance novels with all these like naked men on the front? And I was like, oh, yeah, those are mine. Do you want to talk about this now on the phone while I'm at Chili's? And she was like, oh, I don't know. And I was like, well, I'm gay, so those are mine. We can talk about this when I get home, I guess.
That's how
And,
you broke it to her? Like,
Yeah, I told her over the phone while I was at a Chili's and she was at
it's
home.
like, stop annoying me. I'm gay. We'll talk about
Literally,
it.
I'm gay. I'm at Chili's. I'm hungry. Let me go.
Yeah.
The weird thing was that it was harder, I think harder for my mom than it was for my dad. When I got home, my dad was like, so you're gay, huh? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, cool. And my mom, on the other hand, was like, you're going to have such a hard life. Like, I'm just so worried about your safety. Like, this was late 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
We were just getting to a place within the AIDS epidemic where it was more manageable.
Yeah.
And like there was more known, but she had lived during the worst of it. Of course, she didn't have a ton of gay friends that were affected, but she saw it, she saw it on TV. And, I think it really made her nervous for me. She was like, I just want you to have an easy life. And I'm like, well, guess what, lady? Life isn't easy for anyone.
Yeah.
So like, at least I'm going to do it and have fun and try my best to live my truth.
Yeah, that's like a nice, caring mom thing to say, but like also faking your life with a woman is harder than going
Yeah,
through
I don't really know.
everything, like,
Yeah, it's a nice thing. I'm like, part of me is like, it's quite compassionate, but also I'm like, is it really like, you really have to talk yourself out of other happiness modes when you're saying that. But I get it. I mean, it's definitely a mindset of
yeah,
a suburban
it's
mom.
like mom brain. I've kind of like figured that out. Like moms activate that mom brain where nothing else makes sense, But then I kept getting angry because of that. But then now I realize that there's no point in getting angry because it's just a mom thing. It's instinctual, kind of like.
Yeah, and I'll say like, in that case, I didn't let her opinion rule me. I was like,
yeah, good for you.
I'm sorry that you feel nervous or scared for me, but like,
my life, my rules.
I guess the other thing about it was like, it felt a little like, where was this caring before? Like she had never been like the worried mom.
Mm.
She'd always been like, oh, you'll be fine. Like, she took me to the doctor when I needed to go to the doctor, but like ultimately it was like, you're a kid. Like,
yeah.
it's gonna be fine. there's never been a moment where she was like, I'm worried about your safety. I'm worried about like any of that stuff until that moment. And I was like, well, just it felt a little out of character is what I'll say.
Do you think that I really like love the way you travel, mostly like
Mm-hmm.
alone in your car, just without a destination? Like I'm gonna go across. I remember there was a series on your Instagram where you just posted with snack packs in different cities.
Mm-hmm.
That was like so amazing. But that's like how you just travel. You just go. Like even in Providence, like Sarah, Charlotte, and I would hang out and we're like, "Where's Alex?" And hey, Alex, you want to come down to like I don't know my house? Hey, I'm at like Boston for the weekend. I'm like, when did you leave? You would
I'm
just
in
like
Boston. I'm in,
yeah,
yeah, I think that is pretty representative of my impulsivity. I like traveling alone in my car because it gives me the most freedom and options to do things. I mean, I also, obviously, I love traveling with friends. I've done that before too. But like,
yeah. We went to New York. That was a lot of fun.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
I love, I mean, I've flown to Europe with a group of friends before. Like, I've done other road trips with friends, but like, my favorite way to travel is alone because I'm the only one that has to make a decision.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like, and there is, especially when it comes to like going to see natural phenomena, there's something really personal about it for me. Like, it's nice to share it, but in the end, the experience is very individual. So I often like to do natural excursions alone for that
Yeah.
reason.
That almost sounds like very therapeutic in a way. Like you use traveling as therapy.
Yeah.
But would you say like you're traveling to clear your head or like to explore or like to run away from something? Like what's your motivation that like gets you out the door in your car and like just off?
Um, I guess it depends. Um, there are some aspects of control, right? Where it's like, if I'm feeling really out of control or really anxious, or really down or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
like there is something about like just getting in my car and having the control and knowing where I'm going, or maybe not even knowing where I'm going, but knowing that I can go can be really therapeutic. But then I also think that like personally, I just think it's a better way to travel. I mean, flying is fine. I don't love flying, but
Yeah.
it's like the fastest way to get from A to B, but you miss so much. I think I'm always like in the US, there's a big sort of divide between like the coastal elite, quote unquote elite or whatever you
Yeah.
want to say, and like middle America.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been an advocate of like, before passing judgment, seeing it, going there, meeting people, because you never know what you're going to find. And oftentimes the stereotypes can be pretty damaging. I think in both cases, like, and for me, the only way to do that is to drive through them. You're not going to see anything if you're flying. I mean, what's wild to me about flying, like as a design thing, right, is like, it's like everything you're flying over doesn't even exist. You go through this weird little portal thing, and then you're in a metal tube. You've got a window that's like the size of your head, and you've like whatever city you were in, and then there's nothing, and you're flying. It's like clouds, and then you're in a new city, and there's like the experience of that is very different than actually taking the time to see what is in between. Like, I think it can affect someone's mindset in a way, right? Like, if you only fly from coast to coast or from your hometown to a big city, like you're missing the perspective of what's between. And I think that driving or taking the train, right? Like, I think those are more indicative to giving you context of what the space, the time, the places between where you're going and where you're from.
Yeah.
I think it's like, I don't know. I think it's just a more powerful way to travel.
Yeah, and you're traveling for like the right reason, because mostly when people take a flight, it's like save time to reach the destination, because the destination is more important to them because like of work or like a family trip or whatever. But I couldn't agree more. Like I love traveling by car, and my best friends like you in a way when it comes to like traveling by car. Like he would travel from the north of India to the south of India in his car, like overnight, no questions asked, right? Um, and and that's like beautiful, because then traveling becomes about the journey rather than the destination. Like he doesn't care where he ends up, but it's about traveling through those places.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And also, yeah, what you said about control, it's like controlling in a weird way, like when you're traveling to some place by car and you're the only one driving, like you're the captain of the ship. It's up to you, the turn you make, the stop you take, or if you don't decide to stop or whatever. Like every single inch of that moment is like in your hands.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
would you say like
Nice.
that speaks to you as a designer? Like,
Actually, I think it used to. I think I was very much like, I don't love working on a team. I don't love uh, you know, group consensus or the democratic process, some would say.
mm,
But now, I think in grad school and also now in work, especially, right? Like working on a team only makes things better. Like it makes it harder, that's for sure, but it like if you're doing something alone, all of your biases, all of your history, all of your context is controlling everything you're doing. And there's no one there to check that. And that can lead to pretty bad design.
yeah,
Like, I love brutalism, but like, not amazing design sometimes.
yeah. Especially when you're
Part of that is
designing for
because,
people, right? Like it
yeah,
makes a
yeah.
lot of sense if you're like making art to be that independent or have your voice explicitly. But
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I would challenge that more artists need to do collaborative work, but I do completely understand in a fine art context doing things on your own because it's about, you know, evoking emotion and like it's a very personal thing to do that and it makes sense to be independent. But when it comes to art work or design work, right? Like
yeah,
especially in the healthcare space, like it can't be like that. It cannot. It would be not only unethical but dangerous. Like,
yeah,
and when I think about, I mean, it's interesting tying it back to the driving thing. I actually think that maybe sometimes now, as I have, you know, gotten deeper into the workforce for the first time, really, like driving is like my escape for that. But it's like always in balance. Like I don't know if I could. I don't know if I could do either of those things anymore. I don't know if I could do only teamwork or only independent things anymore because I live in such balance now that I see the benefits of both and I think they're both important. I don't know. Did that make sense?
yeah,
Like
totally. Like you're
it's like
maturing
I don't want to be on either
as
side
a
of the pendulum.
like you're maturing as a person and as a designer, where you need both. You need balance in life, and that's I think a beautiful note to end this podcast on.
Yeah, you need balance.
You need
Yin and
balance,
yang.
people. There you have it. Alex, thank you so much for joining us today.
Like,
And hopefully we'll see you again very soon and delve even deeper to your childhood stories. They're just so fucking hilarious. It's amazing.
I have plenty of very funny childhood stories we can dig into.
Yeah. Yeah, and we didn't
That
even
led to me
get
as a designer, I'll
into
say.
we didn't even like get into our RISD experiences together, which we've had like some crazy times there. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Anyway,
For sure.
all right. Thank you for listening. Bye bye.